Here we go. Got it.
There we go. Okay, got it. But first of all, happy belated 4th of July. Would love to hear from you guys what you did in the chat or what you appreciated about the 4th. I had a great couple of days, just kind of relaxing. Although if you know me, you know that like literally my greatest fear in life are ticks, and Frankie got a tick at the lake. So I was like spiral on another level, and I got home last night and like searched myself from head to toe. they were on Adam's mom found one on her, and the dogs had them. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I think because my phone heard me talking about ticks, this article popped up that said this is supposed to be the worst year we've ever seen for ticks, by the way. So just FYI, throwing that out there for you guys. But hope you had a great 4th of July. Would love to hear what you guys did to celebrate in the chat. I wanted to remind you of this. Relaxing, awesome. Yes, had a great holiday. I know, Stephanie, I saw you were at a pool party. It looked so fun. Thankfully we had great weather, by the way. The last couple of days were kind of spotty, and then yesterday it ended up being great where I was. I wanted to remind you guys and just do a little check-in on a book that I've been reading pretty much every day. I did forget to bring it with me on this trip, so I've been bummed about that. But it's Dr. Daniel Amen. Jill said Did Nothing was awesome. Those are the best. That's like the best day, in my opinion. This book is called Change Your Brain Every Day. It is a daily read. So you just read 1 page a day. And he actually says not to read more than 1 page a day. Wondering if any of you guys have gotten this yet. First time fireworks in your yard, Milton. Hopefully that was successful. No fires. I always get nervous when we're in charge of fireworks. I'm like, oh man. Anyway, would love to hear. Oh, good. Jill's reading it. Yes, it is so good. There's so many great things in this book. Now, I realize that your brain and your mindset are 2 different things. However, in my opinion, when you work on, well, not in my opinion, in a lot of doctors' opinions, when you work on your brain, it also increases your mindset. And so that's why we kind of talk about both of these things together. However, if you're looking for something that you can read 1 page a day to really help your brain and your mindset, I would highly recommend this. And if you're not following him on social media, on Instagram, you should, because he puts out all kinds of great little statistics. Yesterday, he did a bunch of research on like taking anti-anxiety medication and like the effects on your brain long-term. There's just a lot of really good things. But what I want to talk to you about today is my trip to Highlands, North Carolina to hear Dr. Henry Cloud speak. And Dr. Henry Cloud has written several books. A couple of them are Necessary Endings. Boundaries is probably one of his most familiar books to you guys. And then he has a brand new book out. And Heather, I'm hoping maybe we can put the link to it in Amazon, called Trust. And it's all about knowing when to give it, when to withhold it, how to earn it, and how to fix it when it gets broken. And for me, this has a huge piece of your to do with your mindset, because a lot of times, in my opinion, when you are in a place where you're not trusting, whether it's the people closest to you, or whether it's coworkers, or whether it's just your environment or your situation, you can get in a negative mindset very quickly. Oh, thank you. Perfect. Heather put the link to it in there. And then Jess said, yes, Boundaries is an amazing book. If you have not read Boundaries, I need to read it like on the daily. But so I want to talk today about the book Trust. And here's what it looks like. And you guys are going to have to read it for yourselves. However, I am going to give you, I actually don't have the study guide, so I might go ahead and get that. Perfect. So that's the study guide. And then Heather will put the link to the book in. But I want to talk to you about the five foundations of trust and how it has to do with your mindset. However, here's a couple of things just to get your mind thinking. He says when we can become better and better at knowing who is trustworthy and who is not. And when we can get better at deciding when and with whom we will put ourselves at risk. So in the chat, totally curious, no right or wrong, no judgment in the chat. maybe will you put, are you quick to trust, or does it take you a minute to trust? Just curious, by the way. Quick to trust, or does it take you a minute to trust? Susan said takes her a minute. Yeah, what else would you guys say? Quick to trust or takes you a minute, Heather? Takes a minute, quick until you give me a reason not to. Stephanie, I'm that for sure. Quick until, yeah, and Jake, depends on people. Yep, totally. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. So he says you can equip yourself to read between the lines better and better. And then thus doing so, that will increase your mindset, because many of us have said, I'm so sorry I trusted that person. Have you ever said that before? Have you ever been like, oh my gosh, how did I trust them? This is crazy, which then lead us to a negative mindset. And then a negative mindset actually triggers a pattern in our brain. And so we're going to talk about that. But trust is the fuel for all life, especially in relationships. While trust often begins with a feeling, it can't only be based on a feeling, an emotion, or some kind of sense. It has to be rooted in more solid, observable, essential qualities. And so I'm going to start with giving you the 5 foundational aspects. So when you want to trust, when you want to rebuild trust, when you want to earn it for the first time, there are 5 things that you have to have, and you guys are going to think about these probably. Yes, Milton said it's part of taking responsibility, right? I didn't vet this person properly. Totally true. That happens to me every single time too. So I'm going to give you the 5, and I've just put kind of the words, but I'm going to read to you some of my notes from being with him for the day. Obviously, a lot of this is in the book, but I'm going to give you kind of the quick version, and then for a deeper part, you can go read the book. So the first foundational aspect is understanding. We trust someone when we feel like they understand me. He says it's when you can say like, hey, they get me. Nobody is really listening until they feel understood. So here's the part I want you to think about. We have many neurons in our brain called mirror neurons, and they actually feel out, are you with me or not? And so when you're around somebody, your brain, your neurons in your brain are firing all the time. Your mirror neurons are, and they're saying like, is this person with me or are they not? Do they understand me or do they not? Do they get me? Do I feel them? And actually he says it's in your tone, it's in listening, it's in having empathy. There's a proverb in the Bible that says he who gives an answer before listening is a fool. And so a lot of times the understanding has to do with listening. This is the very first thing and the first key to trust. You have to understand someone and they have to understand you. And Dr. Henry Cloud says that when you hit this first button, when you get understanding, then it means that it's turned green and you can go to the next. And here's another thing. When people feel understood, they actually can perform at their very highest. They can perform better and at their very highest when they feel understood. So if you are leading people and you want your people to really perform, they need to feel understood. So it has to start with understanding. And I just want you guys I want to kind of give you like a thing. I want you to think about this for a minute. So in the book, Dr. Henry Cloud gives an example. He just had a double knee replacement. He's had double knee replacement surgeries. And so he kind of walks through the analogy of him leading up to needing surgery. And for the first one, he says he goes to the surgeon and he's highly recommended, and he gets there, and the surgeon comes in, asks no questions, and says, I hear that you need a double knee replacement surgery. Here's what we would do. Here's how long it would take, and here's my nurse, and she can get you on the schedule. And he said immediately his neurons were firing, saying, wait a minute, I don't know if I feel comfortable with him doing the surgery. He never asked me questions. He doesn't understand me. He doesn't understand that I'm an extreme golfer and my knees are very important to the longevity of me playing golf. And so basically he said he didn't go with that surgeon because even though he came highly recommended, because he didn't trust him, because he didn't feel like he understood him and he didn't take the time to understand him. So number 1 of the 5 foundational aspects is understanding. You have to understand them. They have to understand you if you want to trust. Number 2 is really important. And this kind of goes back to what Milton said about vetting people. Well, actually, there's 2 that go back to that. But number 2 is motive. And this is, who is it about when you're trusting someone? It can never be about one person. It has to be mutually gratifying. So what he said about the motive is not only do they understand me, but are they for me? And this is a really big one for me because I sometimes find myself when I don't when I feel like someone has an ulterior motive, or it's, I'm always like having to guess, like, why are they doing this, or why would they ask me to do that, or like, if you're having to guess a lot and ask yourself questions, then it's probably because you don't feel like they have a pure motive. And so he says that not only do they understand me, but they're for me. They will even sacrifice to make sure that they are for someone. We don't even have to be there because we know that they've got our backs. They won't do anything that isn't good for you. So their motive is 100% pure. It's 100% true. And when you think of people who you really, really trust, this probably is true. You know that they have a pure motive. You know that they have your best interest at heart. They're for you. And it's not all about one person. It's mutually gratifying. And they're not only worried about their side of the equation. And so in the book, he continues with the knee story, and he says that he goes to another surgeon, and the surgeon comes in and he does ask him some questions and he does understand him. And then at the end of the consultation, he says, do you care if I bring in 3 of our med students to this meeting? And Dr. Cloud's like, no, that's great. Bring them in. And he said that he brings them in and he's like, you guys, this is exactly what we've been looking for. Somebody with a double knee replacement. I'll be able to have you watch all the surgeries. You'll be able to see exactly what we do right, exactly what we don't do right. And this is the perfect case scenario for exactly what we've been looking for. And so he goes on to talk about that. And Dr. Henry Cloud says, then at that point, he felt like his motive was basically to use him as a cadaver to do surgery in front of these med students, not to, give him the best treatment and the best surgery. His motive was to be able to show these 3 med students exactly, somebody who was in this predicament who needed the surgery. And so he said, at that point, I felt like the motive turned and it became about him and his project and his med students, and not about me and my double knee replacement surgery. So the motive is really, really important. Number 3 is the ability. And what he says about ability is one question: do they have the ability to pull off what I need them to pull off? And this is kind of hard in trust, because especially if you think about somebody like that's a family member or really, really close to you. And I'll never forget, I was one time talking to a therapist actually about a relationship. And she asked me a really great question. She said, Dana, I just want you to think about this simple question. If something were to happen to you, let's just say, God forbid, you were in a car accident or like something happened to you, would you trust that they would have the ability to carry on with the lifestyle and take care of you and do these things? And my thought process was, no, I don't think that they have the ability. And so that was a really kind of quick answer for me when I was thinking through this relationship. But you have to trust someone, they have to have the ability to pull off what you need them to pull off. He said, think about it this way. You may have a great operator, but nobody is leading. They may not be in the right seat. You need to know when someone has the ability or doesn't have the ability to do what you need them to do, because that's where trust comes in. If they are lacking the ability to do what you need them to do, it's never going to work. And the reason is just because you won't be able to trust them. Exactly what we're talking about today. He said this is the difference between a boyfriend and a husband. And he also told this really funny story. I think I told this in one of our office meetings. I can't remember which one, but he said that all of his he has 2 daughters and they're like 2 years apart. And he said that all of his golf buddies always say, what are you going to do when somebody wants to marry him? And he said, it's really simple. I know exactly what I'm going to do. And they're like, what are you going to do? Like, have them come to your house for dinner and you're going to be sitting on the couch with a shotgun in your lap? And he's like, no, I'm going to have them bring a copy of their credit report and their last 2-year tax returns. And his buddies are like, what? Why? And he said, because being a boyfriend is different than being a husband. And I need to know that they have the ability to take care of my daughter for the long haul. And he said, I'm not looking for $800 and I'm not looking for $1 million on their tax returns, but I need to know that they're somewhat there and that they have some level of responsibility and ability to take care of my kids, like my precious, 2 children. And so he said, you just have to know that they have the ability. And then when you do, that's where trust can come in. And he also said that if you are like leading a team, which I know some of you are, you have to think about, does everyone know what everyone else does? Because sometimes people start to question people's ability if they don't really know what everyone else is doing. The next one, number 4 out of 5, is their track record. And actually, this is probably more, Milton, what you said about vetting them enough. You really, really have to know track record. Oh, Milton said, I met with my wife's dad before I proposed, and I had my budget with me in case he asked Milton. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Did he ask? Did he ask for it? Just curious. No. At least you were prepared. I love it. Oh my gosh, I love it. So he said, anytime you want to trust someone, the best predictor of the future is always the past. Oh my gosh, you guys, this number rings on my computer now, and I don't know how to. Oh, it stopped. Okay. Usually it doesn't stop. Perfect. So here's what he said about track record. Our minds build mental maps every like millisecond. Your mind is constantly building a mental map. Every interaction that we have or we are making, we are building a track record in our brain. So like every single little thing, and it can be for the good and it can be for the bad. And sometimes it can be for both. I mean, sometimes we build a track record that's negative that we don't even realize that we're building a track record of, which happened to me last week. And you have to realize it, and then you have to be willing to do what you need to do to correct it. But he said, every time that we're doing something, we're building a track record of what I can expect the next time. If it's good, you're running towards that person. And if it's not, you're actually running away from them. And so he said, you have to think about someone's track record, and that does come into play with trust. And sometimes you might just need to say to them, hey, my brain has built a mental map of your track record that isn't good, because so far this is what I can always expect from you, and therefore it doesn't allow me to trust you in the way that we need to have as a trusting relationship. He said, just remember, this is really good. Forgiveness cleans up yesterday and it's free, but trust is all about the future and it has to be earned. And I thought that was like one of the best things that honestly, it was like one of the best things that I got for the whole entire day that I was with him. I'm going to type it in the chat. Forgiveness cleans up yesterday and it is free, but trust is about the future and it has to be earned. So if you're thinking about when it comes to track record and trusting somebody, just remember that. And by the way, totally curious, when you guys are thinking about this, does any, maybe say yes or no in the chat, does a person come to mind for you that you can think of when you think of track record and you're like, man, I don't have a good track record with them? I don't know. I always think of like a couple people that pop into my head. Jake said yes. Yeah. It's like that pattern over and over and over again. Yep. And then the 5th foundation, which is the last but probably one of the most important, is character. And this one really kind of got me because he said that I was thrown by character, because he said it's not just the values. So when we think of character, we think of like, oh, do they have integrity? Are they honest? And he said, this is not really the values of character. He said, sometimes you have to look at those, but this character is like how they are made up. Like, what is their true makeup? Meaning from like childhood, from the way that they were raised to how their family is. Not that you are always like your family, but the reality is that you do have their DNA. So at some point, like little things will creep in. Like, I don't know if any of you guys see this, but even if you have a family member that you're like, oh my gosh, I never want to be like them. Do you ever catch yourself like, crap, I just did something that they do, or I just acted a way that they have acted. So you have, and for me, you guys, the 5 character, this is the hardest to determine, to figure out, especially when you're meeting people, new people, or when you're figuring out if you can trust them for the first time. I actually shared something this morning on my Instagram that one of the, a friend of mine, Daniel Floyd, who is a pastor in Virginia, I was listening to this sermon that he did, and he said, you can't tell potential until you see someone's patterns. And I thought, man, that's so true with this character. Like you can't really see someone's true makeup until you actually see their patterns. He said a lot of times you'll hear the term like ready, aim, fire. And he said, but you can know people who are like fire, ready, aim, and they actually drive their people crazy. I'm probably one of those people. And he said, but that's their makeup. Like that's just how they're made. That's how they've been wired. He said a lot of times too, like when you're thinking of their character and their makeup to trust them, he said, ask yourself the question, who do you need in certain situations? And this always makes me think of, I've shared this before on here, but this always makes me think of a hilarious story about Linda and Jim McKissick when they were on a cruise and Jimmy choked on I think it was a piece of steak. I can't remember what it was. It's actually funny to think about, but not funny in the moment. But he actually really was choking and like couldn't breathe. And Linda was like, somebody tried to give him the Heimlich at their table and it wasn't working. He was like turning blue. And Linda was like looking around the room and she like pointed to the biggest guy that she could see. And she's like, you come over here, hurry. And she's like pointed to this guy and he gets up and comes over and he starts giving Jimmy the Heimlich. And all of a sudden this piece of food flies out of his mouth. But I always think about that because Linda always says, like, if there's like a emergency going on, like she's who you want in the room because she like will just get it done. I feel like Heather's kind of like that too. Like if there's an emergency going down, I'm really hoping Heather's in the room because she'll be calm and I'll be the one that freaks. But you have to think about like people's makeup, and it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's just truly how they are. How they are as a person, how their makeup is. And a lot of times you can't really change that. You can work and grow on a lot of things and in a lot of areas, but how you're made up is how you're made up. So a couple of quick things on these 5. So just to recap, the first one, in case you missed it, is understanding. They have to feel like they understand you. The second one is motive. Is it true? Is it pure? Is it not one-sided? It's mutually it's mutually benefit. Is that a word? Benefitable? Jake doesn't know either, so we're good. He's like, I'm tired. I have no idea. Just keep going on with it. Number 3 is beneficial. Golly, thanks. Good thing you're here today. Beneficial. Do they have the ability? What is their track record? And then their character makeup. So he said, when you get all 5 things working, and that's when like you feel great about it, he said, just know it may still not work because bad people happen to good people. And I thought, okay, that's like reassuring. So just because you may think that you have all 5 things working, just know that it may still not work because bad people happen to good people. The good news is that the more that you are aware of these 5 things and you can get them working into your mindset, the more that you'll be able to kind of spot and you can get a better feel for. You can kind of get it on your RAS and you can keep going. He said, if you're leading a body of people, your body will have an immune system that is strong. If the immune system of the culture isn't strong, it won't make it like long term. So he said, think about this if you're leading a body of people too, like how the trust is there. Oh, and I was going to tell you one more thing about the final thing. Oh shoot, what was it? The ability. Oh yeah. Okay, so back to his doctor story really fast, just to land the plane on that. So as he was interviewing the surgeons, the next one that he went to, he came in, he asked him a bunch of questions. He really understood. He felt like he understood him. He felt like he understood the importance of the knee surgery. He felt like his motive was great. And then he gets to ability and the surgeon says, yeah, I'm really excited. Actually, you're going to be my first one. And Dr. Henry Cloud was like, don't think so. I don't know that he has the ability at this point. He understands and his motive is true, but I don't know that he has the ability to pull off what I need him to pull off. And then the next one he talked about was a surgeon with his track record. And he said he asked him great questions. His motive was pure. He said, I've done thousands of surgeries. And then he said he got on and read his reviews and everybody was saying the recovery was way too long. I had to go back in for a second surgery. And so he said, after reading all these things, he thought he really doesn't have a great track record of successful surgeries. So he kind of walks through, as you can see. And then finally at the end, the one that he went with, he said, it fired off on everything. He had all 5 of the things. And then the last thing, just to tell you about this too, is he did say, if you are looking to get back trust after trust has been broken, there's a million chapters in here on this. But the one thing he said about this is you can't start to build trust if they're a victim and not accepting responsibility. So you really have to be working with someone who has that abundant mentality. They're not in a victim headspace, because anytime someone's in a victim headspace or they aren't accepting responsibility, there's no way that you're going to get all 5 of these to fire off green. So you might just have to kind of come to terms and be okay with that. So lastly, I just wanted to share with you guys, in case you haven't, Linda was there with me when we heard Dr. Henry Cloud. So we're doing on our podcast right now, Everything Life in Real Estate, that drops every Tuesday. We're doing a 5-part series, and we're actually breaking apart each of the 5 foundations of truth. We've done 2 so far. The second one, let's see, did it drop yesterday? Yeah, motive dropped yesterday. And then next week will be ability. And so if you are interested and you want to deep dive a little more and hear some examples on things that have happened in our life in each of those, you can listen to the podcast, and Heather put that in the chat for you too. So hopefully you guys got something out of this today. What do you think about trust? Good? Yep. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being on. Hope you have a great rest of your week. If you are looking to learn in your trust, Milton, great question. Does this work with career visioning? You know, a lot of times I was thinking about this too, when you were saying track record, when you really are doing the life story and then you're really going 3 deep on the reference checks. I mean, I've done that and I've missed it, by the way. However, at least you're closer to getting it rather than not following the process at all. So I would say, yeah, to me, this kind of goes a lot with that. If you could combine career visioning with also these 5 things, surely we get a little bit better at finding the right people instead of people that we can't trust. Susan had a great thing. She said, this makes me put myself in my client's shoes. And I'm so glad that you said that. I actually had that aha when I was sitting in the room when it comes to just our agents and clients and stuff too. But yeah, put yourself in your client's shoes or in people that you're leading, and maybe do a deep dive of asking yourself these five questions about yourself too. Because he talked a lot about, here's the question he said, what's it like to be on the other side of me as your leader, as your boss, as your realtor, as your whatever. So great aha. Thanks for sharing that. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy your Wednesday. See ya.